In the evening's young sky, where day surrenders to night and the first stars begin their watch, gil-estel, the Evenstar, glimmers with a celestial grace that captivates the hearts of all who behold it. Since the days of the First Age, where the epic tales of legendary figures find their setting, the evening star has cast down its ethereal glow as it sails upon the edge of night. Born from the light of the trees of Valinor, it is a symbol of resistance against the forces of darkness. But how did this star come to be? And why, you may ask, is this star so revered by the elves? And then there is Arwen, the Evenstar of her people. Why is she named in this way? So join me as we wander amongst the stars of Elbereth and piece together the tale of gil-estel, Tolkien's Evenstar. In the land of Valinor stood two great trees, Telperion and Laurelin, the silver tree and the golden tree, whose glow bathed the land in a nourishing light. The trees flourished under the watchful eyes of the Valar and were watered by the tears of Nienna as she wept with pity for the sadness of the world. The one had leaves of dark green that beneath were as shining silver, and from each of his countless flowers a dew of silver light was ever falling, and the earth beneath was dappled with the shadows of his fluttering leaves. The other bore leaves of a young green, like the new-opened beech. Their edges were of glittering gold. Flowers swung upon her branches in clusters of yellow flame, formed each to a glowing horn that spilled a golden rain upon the ground. And from the blossom of that tree there came forth warmth and a great light. Melkor would one day disperse his essence into the very matter of Arda, marring it forever. But there was a time before this when the world was untainted by his corruption. The trees were born into this fledgling world. There they flourished, and in this golden age their light was formed. Hence, their divine luminosity was untarnished and utterly pure. Those among the Eldar who completed the great journey to Aman felt the radiant brilliance of the two trees, bathing in their light and absorbing their splendor. In this land, the Eldar blossomed in wisdom and beauty, transcending their kin in all things. These elves came to be known as the Calaquendi, or the High Elves, forever distinguished by the divine illumination that nourished them. This enriching light, so profoundly revered and cherished, kindled a fire within one among the Eldar by the name of Feanor. Yearning to enshrine and thus preserve the luminescence of the trees, he attempted to capture their brilliance, and in doing so, he created something extraordinary. Feanor's mind was ignited by a profound vision, a glimmer of foresight perhaps, whispering of the dark fate that approached, and so he mused on capturing the light of the trees, so that it might endure for all time. Driven by his newfound inspiration, he devoted himself tirelessly to this endeavor, and eventually he gave his heart in order to achieve his ambition. Thus, three exquisite jewels came into being, each a masterpiece of unparalleled beauty. Only Feanor understood the secrets of their creation, which required a wisdom and skill which no other would ever be able to replicate. But in some wondrous way, he had harnessed the light of Valinor, infusing each gem with the hallowed light of the two trees. As three great jewels they were in form, but not until the end, when Feanor shall return who perished ere the sun was made, and sits now in the halls of awaiting, and comes no more among his kin. Not until the sun passes and the moon falls shall it be known of what substance they were made. Like the crystal of diamonds it appeared, and yet was more strong than adamant, so that no violence could mar it or break it within the kingdom of Arda. Yet that crystal was to the Silmarils, but as is the body to the children of Ilúvatar, the house of its inner fire, that is within it and yet in all parts of it, and is its life. And the inner fire of the Silmarils Feanor made of the blended light of the trees of Valinor, which lives in them yet. The Silmarils of their own radiance shone like the stars of Varda, and yet, as were they indeed living things, they rejoiced in light and received it and gave it back in hues more marvelous than before. Varda, the radiant queen of the Valar and the weaver of starlight, cast her gaze upon these shimmering jewels, and in a moment of divine consecration, Varda blessed the Silmarils, imbuing them with a sacred power. From that time onward, no mortal, no sullied hands, nor any creature of darkness could lay a finger upon them without their flesh being scorched and withered. And another of the Valar, Mandos, the keeper of the houses of the dead, foretold that the destinies of the earth, the sea, and the sky were sealed within the radiant hearts of these three jewels, binding the very elements of creation in a dance of destiny. The Silmarils, already much celebrated and renowned for their unmatched brilliance, were destined to soon ascend in their significance even further, for Melkor would conspire with an ancient, malevolent force. Together, they would plunge Valinor into a devastating darkness, stealing away its sacred light and leaving its beauty shrouded in shadow. Melkor, with Ungoliant, the great primordial spider by his side, wrought a cataclysm upon the world. With their dark alliance, they drained the life from Telperion and Lorelin. As Ungoliant consumed the luminous lifeblood of the trees, they left behind only darkness. It is told that even as Feanor and Fingolfin stood before Manwë, there came the mingling of the lights when both trees were shining, and the silent city of Valmar was filled with a radiance of silver and gold. And in that very hour, Melkor and Ungoliant came hastening over the fields of Valinor as the shadow of a black cloud upon the wind fleets over the sunlit earth. And they came before the green mound Ezelohar. Then the unlight of Ungoliant rose up even to the roots of the trees, and Melkor sprang upon the mound, and with his black spear he smote each tree to its core, wounded them deep, and their sap poured forth as it were their blood, and was spilled upon the ground. But Ungoliant sucked it up, and going then from tree to tree, she set her black beak to their wounds till they were drained, and the poison of death that was in her went into their tissues and withered them, root, branch, and leaf. And they died. And so, a profound darkness enveloped Valinor, and the ensuing terror was merciless. The glow of the trees was replaced not by a mere absence of light, but by an oppressive shadow born in that accursed moment. This darkness was a living entity, with tendrils that could reach deep into the soul, seizing it with icy dread. The trees were gone, yet the Silmarils still held within them a small portion of the tree's shimmering light. However, Melkor's malevolent scheme was far from over, for he soon crept into Feanor's treasury in Formenos, and there, in the dead of night, he seized the precious Silmarils. Then he fled, racing through the veils of twilight to the cold and desolate northlands of Middle-earth. It was there, in the foreboding embrace of his ancient strongholds, that he kept his ill-gotten treasures. In this place of shadows, the Silmarils must have seemed all the brighter. Here they found their new home upon a crown of iron. Their divine light, suffused with the hallowed blessing of Varda, seared his flesh with an unending fire, a torment that knew no mercy. And still, despite the ceaseless agony that gnawed at his being, he bore the crown steadfastly for 5 centuries of unrelenting torment. In the aftermath of the Silmarils' theft, Feanor and his sons swore an unbreakable oath in the name of Iluvatar, which bound them to an endless pursuit, a ceaseless march of vengeance and reclamation. The words of this fateful oath are recounted within the annals of Aman. Be he foe or friend, be he foul or clean, brood of Morgoth or bright Vala, elder or Maya or aftercomer, man yet unborn upon Middle-earth, neither law nor love, nor league of swords, dread nor danger, not doom itself, shall defend him from Feanor and Feanor's kin, whoso hideth or hoardeth, or in hand taketh, finding keepeth or afar casteth, a Silmaril. This swear we all, death we will deal him ere day's ending, woe unto world's end. Our word hear thou, Eru All-Father, to the everlasting. Darkness doom us if our deed faileth. On the holy mountain hear in witness, and our vow remember, Manwë and Vardar. The vow, bound by the sacred name of Eru Iluvatar, could never be undone. It would relentlessly follow those who dared to utter its solemn words until the very end of time. Upon swearing the sacred vow, Feanor gathered his valiant host of Noldor. Together, they embarked upon a voyage across the sea. Their destination was the shores of Middle-earth. Their mission was to hunt down Melkor, who Feanor now cursed with the dread name of Morgoth. This relentless pursuit was driven by vengeance and an unyielding desire to reclaim what was stolen. But word of the Noldor's coming came to Morgoth in his shadowed fortress of Angband, and he called forth his legions from the depths. In his arrogance, Morgoth held no fear of the elves, for their blades had yet to taste battle. And so, he unleashed a swarm of wicked creatures upon Feanor's camp, hoping to crush them before they could meet him in open battle. But the Noldor, with spirits ablaze and courage fierce, met the onslaught with unyielding resolve. Their valor shone brightly as they scattered Morgoth's hordes across the blood-stained fields. The taste of victory was intoxicating to Feanor, who, emboldened by their triumph, pushed on with a fierce determination. His eyes now turned toward the dark heart of Angband, where the Silmarils awaited the coming of their maker. Thus it was that he drew far ahead of the van of his host, and seeing this, the servants of Morgoth turned to bay, and there issued from Angband Balrogs to aid them. There upon the confines of Dor Daedaloth, the land of Morgoth, Feanor was surrounded with few friends about him. Long he fought on and undismayed, though he was wrapped in fire and wounded with many wounds. But at the last he was smitten to the ground by Gothmog, lord of Balrogs, whom Ecthelion after slew in Gondolin. There he would have perished had not his sons in that moment come up with force to his aid, and the Balrogs left him and departed to Angband. Then his sons raised up their father and bore him back towards Mithrim. But as they drew near to Ethel Sirion, and were upon the upward path to the pass over the mountains, Feanor bade them halt, for his wounds were mortal, and he knew that his hour was come. And looking out from the slopes of Ered Wethrine with his last sight, he beheld far off the peaks of Thangorodrim, mightiest of the towers of Middle-earth, and knew with the foreknowledge of death that no power of the Noldor would ever overthrow them. But he cursed the name of Morgoth thrice, and laid it upon his sons to hold to their oath and to avenge their father. And so ended the life of Feanor, the legendary creator of the Silmarils. And as he passed, the fierce blaze of his indomitable spirit consumed his mortal form, leaving nothing but a heap of ashes in its wake. His sons survived him, and were eternally tethered to the solemn vow they had taken to reclaim the Silmarils. The full weight of this promise would only be realized when a Silmaril was finally reclaimed from Morgoth. However, it was not the sons of Feanor who achieved this feat. Instead, it was a mortal man who severed it from Morgoth's crown during the events of one of the great tales of the First Age. Beren, burdened by countless sorrows, stumbled into Doriath, and as he roamed through Neldrith's woods one summer evening, beneath the tender glow of the rising moon, he beheld Luthien. She danced upon the grass in the forest glades. The sight of her, radiant and ethereal, swept away the shadows of his suffering, casting him into a spellbound trance. For she was the very embodiment of beauty, surpassing all others among the children of Iluvatar. Luthien, a radiant being born of two worlds, was the cherished daughter of the elven king Elu Thingol and the celestial Maya, Melian. She embodied the grace of the elves and the ethereal magic of her mother, a true marvel of her lineage. In contrast, Beren was but a mortal man, his life a fleeting whisper when compared to the eternal song of Luthien's kind. Regardless, Luthien would reciprocate Beren's love, and so she led him to stand before her father. King Thingol, his heart hardened against the race of men, harbored no affection for mortals. He would not deign to accept them into his service, let alone entertain the notion of one marrying his precious daughter. However, to dismiss Beren outright was not his way. Instead, he presented the mortal with a challenge, a glimmer of possibility laced with peril, as a means to prove his worth. I see the ring, son of Barahir, and I perceive that you are proud and deem yourself mighty. But a father's deeds, even had his service been rendered to me, avail not to win the daughter of Thingol and Melian. See now, I too desire a treasure that is withheld. For rock and steel and the fires of Morgoth keep the jewel that I would possess against all the powers of the elf kingdoms. Yet I hear you say that bonds such as these do not daunt you. Go your way therefore. Bring to me in your hand a Silmaril from Morgoth's crown, and then, if she will, Luthien may set her hand in yours. Then you shall have my jewel. And though the fate of Arda lie within the Silmarils, yet you shall hold me generous. King Thingol presented Beren with a quest that seemed beyond the realm of possibility, to retrieve a Silmaril from Morgoth's dark crown. Yet Beren's heart remained steadfast and fearless. With a resolve as unshakable as the mountains, he ventured forth. But Luthien would not allow Beren to venture to his death alone, and despite her father's desperate attempts to confine her, Luthien broke free from her imprisonment. Guided by love, she joined Beren on his perilous journey to the fortress of Angband. Together, they braved the abyss of Morgoth's realm, standing side by side before the Dark Lord's throne. Then, Beren and Luthien went through the gate and down the labyrinthine stairs, and together wrought the greatest deed that has been dared by elves or men. For they came to the seat of Morgoth in his nethermost hall that was upheld by horror, lit by fire, and filled with weapons of death and torment. Then, Morgoth, looking upon her beauty, conceived in his thought an evil lust, and a design more dark than any that had yet come into his heart since he fled from Valinor. Thus he was beguiled by his own malice, for he watched her, leaving her free for a while, and taking secret pleasure in his thought. Then suddenly she eluded his sight, and out of the shadows began a song of such surpassing loveliness, and of such blinding power that he listened perforce. And a blindness came upon him as his eyes roamed to and fro, seeking her. All his court were cast down in slumber. Then Luthien, catching up her winged robe, sprang into the air, and her voice came dropping down like rain into pools, profound and dark. She cast her cloak before his eyes and set upon him a dream, dark as the outer void where once he walked alone. Suddenly he fell, as a hill sliding in avalanche, and hurled like thunder from his throne, lay prone upon the floors of hell. The iron crown rolled echoing from his head. All things were still. In the stillness, while Melkor and his court lay in a deep slumber, Beren approached, and he drew forth the blade known as Angrist. Beren placed the blade against the iron crown of his formidable foe, and severed one of those much-coveted fragments of celestial beauty from the crown. The Silmaril was his. As he held the jewel, despite Beren being mortal, it welcomed his touch and did not inflict any harm upon him. In his possession lay the precious gem that he needed to win the hand of Luthien. Yet, a new desire took hold of him, to claim all three of the Silmarils. However, such greed could not remain without consequence. In a moment of fate, the blade, Angrist, snapped under the strain of cutting free the next Silmaril, and a shard of its broken edge was cast through the air, striking Morgoth's cheek. The Dark Lord's pained groan echoed through the corridors of his fortress, awakening a restless murmur that surged through the host of Angband, pulling them from their deep slumber and into a tumultuous awakening. In their desperate flight, Beren and Luthien were met with a harrowing obstacle. The great werewolf Carharoth, roused from a deep and restless slumber, loomed before the gate like a demon. His eyes fell upon the Silmaril that shimmered in Beren's grasp. Undeterred by its hallowed light, Carharoth bit off Beren's hand, the Silmaril still in his grasp. As the Silmaril came into contact with the monstrous beast's flesh, a fire of torment ignited within him. The gem burned with a wrathful intensity, filling him with unbearable agony. With a howl of pain and fury, Carharoth fled. Circling in the lofty heavens over the realm of Morgoth was Thorondor, the king of the eagles of old, along with his loyal companions. Witnessing the frenzy of the wolf and the plight of Beren and of Luthien, they swooped swiftly to their aid and bore them to Doriath. Beren and Luthien stood before Thingol as they recounted the tale of their perilous journey. Understanding that one of the Silmarils was now in the belly of the great wolf, Thingol summoned a noble host. With weapons gleaming, they set forth to confront the fearsome wolf. They found Carharoth by the shimmering waters of Esgalduin, where he drank deeply. Around him, they wove a vigilant circle and waited, until they noticed that Huon, the great hound of the Valar, was missing. Beren stood beside Thingol, and suddenly they were aware that Huon had left their side. Then a great baying awoke in the thicket, for Huon, becoming impatient and desiring to look upon this wolf, had gone in alone to dislodge him. But Carharoth avoided him, and bursting from the thorns, leaped suddenly upon Thingol. Swiftly Beren strode before him with a spear, but Carharoth swept it aside and felled him, biting at his breast. In that moment, Huon leaped from the thicket upon the back of the wolf, and they fell together fighting bitterly. There they fought to the death, but Thingol gave no heed, for he knelt by Beren, seeing that he was sorely hurt. Huon, in that hour, slew Carharoth, but there in the woven woods of Doriath, his own doom long spoken was fulfilled, and he was wounded mortally, and the venom of Morgoth entered into him. Then he came, and falling beside Beren, spoke for the third time with words, and he bade Beren farewell before he died. Beren spoke not, but laid his hand upon the head of the hound, and so they parted. Then Mablung took a knife and ripped up the belly of the wolf, and the Silmaril lay there unveiled, and the light of it filled the shadows of the forest all about them. Then quickly and in fear Mablung took it and set it in Beren's living hand, and Beren was aroused by the touch of the Silmaril and held it aloft and bade Thingol receive it. "Now is the quest achieved," he said, "and my doom full wrought," and he spoke no more. The hunt for Carharoth cost the lives of Beren and Huon. Yet, in the end, Thingol achieved his heart's yearning. He secured one of the Silmarils, and with it, a fragment of the radiant light from the trees of Valinor, claiming it for his own. The roles that Beren and Luthien would play in the saga of the Evenstar were far from complete. The weary survivors carried Beren and Huon back to Luthien. There, she wrapped her arms around Beren and kissed him with untold sorrow in her heart. As the tide of life ebbed away, she implored him to wait for her beyond the Western Sea. Obedient to her plea, Beren's spirit lingered in the halls of Mandos, unable to pass beyond the circles of the world, until Luthien joined him once more. In the depths of her boundless grief, Luthien's soul slipped from her body, embarking on a haunting journey to join Beren in the halls of Mandos, where she hoped to reclaim her lost love. Her sorrow was unmatched by any who had suffered before. With a heart full of anguish and a voice laden with sorrow, she approached Mandos, the judge of the dead, and knelt before him. Her voice rose in a mournful song, and each note was a testament to her profound loss and undying love. The song of Luthien before Mandos was the song most fair that ever in words was woven, and the song most sorrowful that ever the world shall hear. Unchanged, imperishable, it is sung still in Valinor beyond the hearing of the world, and listening the Valar are grieved. For Luthien wove two themes of words, of the sorrow of the Eldar and the grief of men, of the two kindreds that were made by Ilúvatar to dwell in Arda, the kingdom of earth amid the innumerable stars. And as she knelt before him, her tears fell upon his feet like rain upon the stones. And Mandos was moved to pity, who never before was so moved, nor has been since. Thus he called forth Beren, and in the lands beyond the Western Sea, the souls of Beren and Luthien found each other once more. In that haven, their spirits rekindled a love that transcended time and destiny. Yet Mandos, bound by the limits of his power, could not alter the destiny of men. It is for this reason that he sought the counsel of Manwë, the Lord of the Valar. Manwë offered Luthien a poignant choice. She could embrace the fate of the elves, and in doing so, she would cleanse herself of all sorrows and live a tranquil existence where past griefs would fade away. Alternatively, she could choose the fate of men, a path fraught with uncertainty. In this mortal life, she would be reunited with Beren, but without any guarantee of enduring happiness. This choice would lead her to die once more, and her beauty would, all too soon, become nothing more than a memory. Luthien, driven by love, chose to relinquish her immortal heritage. She resolved to return and share the fleeting, fragile life of a mortal with Beren, intertwining her fate with his, embracing the ephemeral joy and sorrow that defines the fate of men. And now, returned to life, Beren and Luthien would weave themselves into the heart of our story once more. For the Silmaril would adorn the neck of Luthien, nestled at the very heart of the Nauglamir. The Nauglamir was a radiant golden necklace, crafted by the dwarves of Nogrod and Belegost for Finrod Felagund. This exquisite creation was studded with a multitude of resplendent gems, which Finrod had brought with him from Valinor to Middle-earth. It became the most renowned piece of Finrod's treasure, embodying the pinnacle of dwarven craftsmanship from the Elder Days. The Nauglamir was discovered by Húrin amidst the hoard of the great dragon Glaurung, a glittering jewel hidden amongst shadows and gold. He brought this legendary treasure to the kingdom of Doriath, presenting it to Thingol. Now in possession of both the Nauglamir and a Silmaril, Thingol desired to combine the two great treasures. He would merge the Silmaril's divine brilliance with the Nauglamir's ancient beauty so that he might wear this wondrous creation both day and night. To breathe life into this grand vision, he sought the aid of the dwarves. Yet, the dwarves found themselves enraptured by the Nauglamir's sheer splendor and in awe of the Silmaril. Overcome with longing, they yearned to claim these treasures for their own. Thingol went down alone to their deep smithies and sat ever among them as they worked. In time, his desire was achieved, and the greatest of the works of elves and dwarves were brought together, and made one, and its beauty was very great. For now the countless jewels of the Noglamere did reflect and cast abroad in marvelous hues, the light of the Silmaril amidmost. Then Thingol, being alone among them, made to take it up and clasp it about his neck. But the dwarves in that moment withheld it from him, and demanded that he yield it up to them, saying, "By what right does the Elven King lay claim to the Noglamere that was made by our fathers for Finrod Felagund, who is dead? It has come to him, but by the hand of Hurin, the man of Dorlomin, who took it as a thief out of the darkness of Nargothrond." But Thingol perceived their hearts, and saw well that desiring the Silmaril they sought but a pretext and fair cloak for their true intent. And in his wrath and pride he gave no heed to his peril, but spoke to them in scorn, saying, "How do ye of uncouth race dare to demand aught of me, Elu Thingol, Lord of Beleriand, whose life began by the waters of Cuiviénen, years uncounted ere the fathers of the stunted people awoke?" And standing tall and proud among them, he bade them with shameful words be gone unrequited out of Doriath. Then the lust of the dwarves was kindled to rage by the words of the king, and they rose up about him and laid hands on him and slew him as he stood. The dwarves who had spilled the blood of Thingol found themselves at the mercy of the wrathful elves of Doriath, who showed them none. Yet, amid the ensuing confusion and the chaos of retribution, two of the perpetrators managed to evade the elven justice and retreat to their stronghold in Nogrod. These two survivors spun a deceitful story to their kin, painting a grim picture of injustice. They claimed that Thingol, in a bid to cheat them out of their rightful reward, had orchestrated their murder. This lie stirred the rage of the dwarves, and so, with axes drawn and fury blazing, they set forth to Doriath, driven by the false promise of avenging their murdered kin. The army of the dwarves surged forth like a relentless tide, overwhelming the elves. As the Battle of the Thousand Caves unfolded, the dwarves stormed through the hallowed halls of Menegroth. Their greed knew no bounds, and they plundered the fabled treasure of Doriath, seizing the radiant Noglamere amidst their looting. Yet Beren, returned from death, rose as a beacon of defiance. He led a valiant host of elves to meet the dwarves. One by one, the dwarves fell beneath the elvish assault, their ambitions snuffed out like the last embers of a dying fire. In the aftermath of this grim and needless conflict, he bore the treasured necklace back to Luthien. She would henceforth wear the Noglamere about her neck, and in this union, she became the fairest vision to grace the lands east of Valinor. Yet, time's cruel hand would inevitably bring an end to Luthien's mortal life. With her passing, the Noglamere, now entwined with her legacy, would come to her son, Dior. In this time, the Oath of Feanor would propel the Silmaril on its fated journey toward its ultimate destination. For news came to Feanor's sons that the Noglamere had passed to Dior. Consumed by the Oath's cruel command, they demanded the Silmaril be surrendered into their keeping. Yet Dior offered no reply to their demands. In their wrathful desperation, the sons of Feanor descended upon Doriath with a storm of violence and fury, and Dior, the son of Beren and Luthien, was killed. And though they managed to seize the city in their blood-soaked rage, their triumph proved hollow, for the Silmaril had vanished. Dior had been blessed with a daughter, and they named her Elwing, a name that translates to star spray. Her arrival was marked by a night of stars, whose light twinkled like scattered diamonds in the mists of the Lanthir Lammoth waterfall that cascaded beside her father's home. Elwing united in marriage with Eärendil, the illustrious son of Tuor and Princess Idril, whose lineage sang of grandeur from the house of Turgon. Their union was not just the merging of two souls, but a weaving together of fates that would shape the world. From this sacred bond were born two sons, each a beacon of hope and promise. Among them was one who would become a much-beloved figure, featuring heavily in both The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Bright Eärendil was then lord of the people that dwelt nigh to Sirion's mouths, and he took to wife Elwing the Fair, and she bore to him Elrond and Elros, who are called the Half-Elven. The reason for the disappearance of the precious Nauglamir was because Elwing had fled the city to the distant havens of Sirion, taking the Nauglamir with her. For a time, the sons of Feanor relented, but as time passed, their unfulfilled oath began to torment them, and so they returned in another attempt to claim the Silmaril. Their unyielding pursuit led them to assault the mouths of Sirion. Amid the chaos and the clash of steel, Elwing, in desperation, flung herself into the churning sea, the Nauglamir glistening defiantly around her neck. It seemed as though both she and the Silmaril would be lost to the depths of the sea. Yet, as fate would have it, the mighty Ulmo, Lord of the Waters and one of the greatest of the Valar, would extend his divine grace to her. For Ulmo bore up Elwing out of the waves, and he gave her the likeness of a great white bird, and upon her breast there shone as a star the Silmaril, as she flew over the water to seek Eärendil, her beloved. On a time of night, Eärendil, at the helm of his ship, saw her come towards him, as a white cloud exceeding swift beneath the moon, as a star over the sea moving in strange course, a pale flame on wings of storm. And it is sung that she fell from the air upon the timbers of Vingilot in a swoon, nigh unto death for the urgency of her speed, and Eärendil took her to his bosom. But in the morning with marveling eyes he beheld his wife in her own form beside him with her hair upon his face, and she slept. And so it was that Eärendil, the illustrious half-elf mariner, whose legend glows as brightly as the stars he would traverse, would become the ultimate guardian of the Silmaril. From the hands of Elwing, he received the radiant gem. He affixed the Silmaril to his brow, where its light would shine like a beacon in the boundless dark. This sacred light within, ablaze with an ethereal brilliance, would guide his majestic vessel over the ocean. As his ship sailed ever onward, the luminosity of the gem grew ever more resplendent, heralding their approach to the shores of the undying lands, where Valinor lay in tranquility. Eärendil came before the Valar, where he spoke of Middle-earth's beleaguered men and elves, and implored them to lend their divine strength to the struggle against Morgoth. Moved by his plea, the Valar pledged their resolve, vowing to personally journey across the sea to make war upon Morgoth. They also took Eärendil's vessel, infused it with their grace, and guided it to the farthest reaches of the world, where it passed through the door of night. There, amid the boundless expanses of the sky, the ship was lifted into the celestial oceans, its voyage now a beacon of hope visible to all. Now fair and marvelous was that vessel made, and it was filled with a wavering flame, pure and bright. And Eärendil the mariner sat at the helm, glistening with dust of elven gems, and the Silmaril was bound upon his brow. Far he journeyed in that ship, even into the starless voids, but most often was he seen at morning or at evening, glimmering in sunrise or sunset, as he came back to Valinor from voyages beyond the confines of the world. Now, when first Vingilot was set to sail in the seas of heaven, it rose unlooked for, glittering and bright, and the people of Middle-earth beheld it from afar and wondered, and they took it for a sign and called it Gil-Estel, the star of high hope. He sailed far beyond the edges of mortal dreams, navigating his vessel through the boundless expanses of the sky. Yet, it was in the gentle embrace of dawn and the tranquil grace of twilight that he was most often glimpsed, his ship shimmering against the canvas of sunrise and sunset. Eärendil is ever destined to traverse the vast heavens, an eternal voyager until the very world's ending. After Morgoth was banished into the abyss of the void, his malevolent will lingered, a shadowy whisper in the hearts of his servants of old, steering them ever towards defiance, striving to undermine the divine intentions of the Valar and to corrupt those who followed their guidance. The Valar understood this all too clearly. Thus, they gathered in solemn council, seeking ways to shield the children of Ilúvatar from the lingering shadows cast by Morgoth's spirit. They once more called upon the Eldar of Middle-earth to journey into the west. Those who heeded this summons found their refuge upon the Isle of Tol Eressëa, amidst the embrace of the timeless seas. For the mortal men, the Edain, a realm was crafted, a place of wonder set apart from both Middle-earth and Valinor by the vast sea. This land was christened Andor, the land of gift. And as the star of Eärendil blazed brightly in the western sky, it was as a beacon signaling that all was prepared. And as the Edain set sail, the Evenstar would be their luminous guide across a hushed and restful ocean. Then the Edain set sail upon the deep waters, following the star, and the Valar laid a peace upon the sea for many days, and sent sunlight and a sailing wind, so that the waters glittered before the eyes of the Edain like rippling glass, and the foam flew like snow before the stems of their ships. But so bright was Eärendil that even at morning men could see it glimmering in the west, and in the cloudless night it shone alone, for no other star could stand beside it. And setting their course towards it, the Edain came at last over leagues of sea, and saw afar the land that was prepared for them, Andor, the land of gift, shimmering in a golden haze. Then they went up out of the sea and found a country fair and fruitful, and they were glad. And they called that land Elena, which is starwards, but also Anadune, which is westerness, Numenore in the high Eldarine tongue. Guided by the brilliance of the Evenstar, they forged their path. Upon the land of Andor, they would establish a realm that would be revered throughout the ages. This nascent kingdom, cradled by the embrace of divine favor, would come to be known as Numenor, and the people of this land would come to be known as the Dunedain. From this blessed race would emerge the line of the kings of men, an esteemed lineage to which Aragorn belonged. Arwen Undomiel, the cherished daughter of Elrond, was hailed as the Evenstar of her people. As the granddaughter of Eärendil, it is only natural that Arwen should bear a name steeped in the grandeur of her heritage. However, her title was a testament not only to her lineage, but also to the breathtaking beauty that she possessed. She stood as the most radiant among the children of Ilúvatar in the Third Age, a beauty who mirrored the grace of Luthien from an age long past. But it was not only her beauty that was foreshadowed in the tale of Luthien. Her love story with Aragorn was to unfold in a manner which was reminiscent of the timeless romance between Beren and Luthien. Arwen, too, chose to relinquish her elven immortality, trading the agelessness of her kind for the fleeting yet profound journey of mortality shared with Aragorn. The name Undomiel emerges from the union of two words, Undome and Elen, woven together into a single, harmonious expression. This melding of sounds creates a name that sings with the beauty of both dusk and starlight. Undome translates to dusk. The elves held a special place in their hearts for the sacred hour of star opening, when the veil between day and night gently lifted, revealing the celestial splendor that awaited. Elen translates to star. Thus the name Undomiel emerges, translating beautifully to evening star. Frodo saw her whom few mortals had yet seen. Arwen, daughter of Elrond, in whom it was said that the likeness of Luthien had come on earth again. And she was called Undomiel, for she was the Evenstar of her people. The name Undomiel captures the breathtaking beauty experienced at dawn and at dusk. These fleeting hours of grace, tinged with a hint of melancholy, are the moments which Arwen herself personifies. Her story, a living testament to the beauty of that all too brief twilight interlude. As the Fellowship stood on the cusp of departure from the realm of Lothlorien, a moment of profound parting unfolded. Galadriel bestowed upon Frodo the Phial of Galadriel, which was a vessel of crystal that held an enchanted liquid. Inside this delicate chalice lay the brilliance of the Evenstar, which had been captured within the water of Galadriel's mirror. This gift, shimmering with celestial light, was a beacon of hope and solace, destined to aid Frodo and Sam on their path through the darkness that lay ahead. "And you, Ringbearer," she said, turning to Frodo, "I come to you last, who are not last in my thoughts. For you I have prepared this." She held up a small crystal phial. It glittered as she moved it, and rays of white light sprang from her hand. "In this phial," she said, "is caught the light of Eärendil's star, set amid the waters of my fountain. It will shine still brighter when night is about you. May it be a light to you in dark places when all other lights go out. Remember Galadriel and her mirror." The Phial of Galadriel was a beacon of salvation for Frodo and Sam on multiple occasions. The first time in which its power was felt was as they neared the foreboding stairs of Cirith Ungol. As they drew closer, a vision of dread unfolded before Frodo's eyes. A formidable legion of cavalrymen, commanded by none other than the Lord of the Nazgul himself. When the Witch King, draped in shadows and malevolence, came to an ominous halt, Frodo's soul was gripped by the icy fear that they had been discovered. The rider halted suddenly, right before the entrance of the bridge, and behind him all the host stood still. There was a pause, a dead silence. Maybe it was the ring that called to the Wraith Lord, and for a moment he was troubled, sensing some other power within his valley. This way and that turned the dark head, helmed and crowned with fear, sweeping the shadows with its unseen eyes. Frodo waited, like a bird at the approach of a snake, unable to move. And as he waited, he felt more urgent than ever before the command that he should put on the ring, and he felt only the beating upon him of a great power from outside. It took his hand, and as Frodo watched with his mind, not willing it but in suspense, as if he looked on some old story far away, it moved the hand inch by inch towards the chain upon his neck. Then his own will stirred. Slowly it forced the hand back and set it to find another thing. A thing lying hidden near his breast. Cold and hard it seemed as his grip closed on it, the Phial of Galadriel, so long treasured and almost forgotten till that hour. As he touched it, for a while, all thought of the ring was banished from his mind. In the heart of Shelob's shadowed lair, where darkness coiled around every corner and menace hung heavy in the air, Frodo wielded the phial with a desperate hope. In a moment of raw fear and fierce determination, Frodo's voice rose, a fragile thread of defiance against the suffocating blackness. He called out, his words ringing with an unfamiliar melody in a language that had never before graced his tongue. He uttered an incantation in Quenya, a tongue of old, uncharted by his understanding, Aya Eärendil Elenion Ankalima, which, like a prayer to the heavens, translated to Hail Eärendil, brightest of stars. Lost and alone in that place of darkness, Frodo unwittingly evoked a celestial guide, summoning the light of the evening star. The Phial, in response, blazed with a fierce and unyielding light, holding back the shadows and offering a glimmer of salvation. But even the radiance of the Phial could not shield Frodo from the cruel venom of Shelob. Yet, with a fierce resolve kindled by its light, Sam drew upon the Phial's power and rose against the formidable spider. The small, radiant vessel, brimming with hope, became his beacon in the darkest hour, inspiring him to battle the ancient terror and protect his faltering friend. Even as Sam himself crouched, looking at her, seeing his death in her eyes, a thought came to him, as if some remote voice had spoken, and he fumbled in his breast with his left hand and found what he sought. Cold and hard and solid, it seemed to his touch in a phantom world of horror, the Phial of Galadriel. "Galadriel," he said faintly, and then he heard voices far off but clear, the crying of the elves as they walked under the stars in the beloved shadows of the Shire, and the music of the elves as it came through his sleep in the Hall of Fire in the house of Elrond. Gilthoniel a Elbereth, and then his tongue was loosed, and his voice cried in a language which he did not know. A Elbereth Gilthoniel, Omenel Palandiriel, Lenalon Sidinguruthos, Atironin Fanuilos, and with that he staggered to his feet and was Samwise the Hobbit, Hamfast's son, again. As Sam's voice rose, he spoke the words of an elvish hymn dedicated to Varda. His words translated to, "O Elbereth Starkindler, from heaven gazing afar, to thee I cry here beneath the shadow of death. O look towards me, Everwhite." In this sacred utterance, Sam called upon Varda, the resplendent queen of the Valar, the divine being who bestowed her blessing upon the Silmarils and wove the very stars into the night's canvas. After this, Sam and Frodo would soon come face to face with the grim watchers of the Tower of Cirith Ungol. Seated upon their ominous thrones, the sentinels were statues of terror, colossal, three-bodied creatures with heads like vultures, their eyes glinting with a malevolent, unyielding gaze. These guardians, cursed with a malignant spirit of unrelenting vigilance, stood as eternal wardens, barring the path to the Dark Lord's enemies. Their quest may have failed in that very moment if Sam had not drawn the Phial of Galadriel, lifting it high. The radiance burst forth with an urgent brilliance, scattering the darkness that clung to the gloomy arch. The monstrous watchers, frozen in their chilling silence, were laid bare, their grotesque forms exposed to the light. In an instant, the resolve of the watchers shattered with the suddenness of a severed thread, leaving them powerless. Frodo and Sam surged forward as the evening star unleashed its force, just before the arch came crashing down behind them. The guiding light of gil-estel became an essential force in the hobbits' struggle. Without the radiant gift of the light of the Evenstar and the prescient wisdom of Galadriel, their quest to destroy the ring would have likely faltered and failed amidst the shadows. Tolkien commented in letter 297 that he once discovered a word that he found particularly pleasing, the Anglo-Saxon term Eärendil, which was a word that they used to describe a star, presaging the dawn. Tolkien seems to have been so captivated by this word that he decided to weave it into his legendarium. Accordingly, Eärendil was born. The most important name in this connection is Eärendil. This name is in fact, as is obvious, derived from Anglo-Saxon, Eärendil. I was struck by the great beauty of this word or name, entirely coherent with the normal style of Anglo-Saxon, but euphonic to a peculiar degree in that pleasing but not delectable language. It at least seems certain that it belonged to astronomical myth and was the name of a star or star group. To my mind, the Anglo-Saxon uses, seem plainly to indicate that it was a star presaging the dawn. At any rate, in English tradition, that is what we now call Venus, the morning star, as it may be seen shining brilliantly in the dawn before the actual rising of the sun. Given this insight, the Evenstar reveals itself as none other than the brilliant Venus, the luminous jewel of our evening and morning heavens. For those who cherish Tolkien's tales, Venus is a living echo of Eärendil's voyage, a timeless reminder that the heroic spirit of Eärendil forever charts its radiant course through the boundless expanse above us. Venus is one of the 5 planets that can be seen without the need for a telescope. This shimmering world orbits between Earth and the Sun. As the Sun stretches its first golden fingers over the horizon, or as it dips below, Venus makes its presence known in the twilight. If you find yourself captivated by the world of Tolkien, then take a moment to seek out Venus in the night sky and let its light draw you into contemplation. There, in the quiet moments of reflection, one can almost hear the echo of ancient stories, the rushing waters of Anduin, and the rustle of the Malorn trees in Lothlorien. It is as if the star itself hums with the history of Arda, a celestial embodiment of the tales that Tolkien so lovingly crafted. The light of the Evenstar weaves its luminous thread throughout the ages of Middle-earth. It began with the trees of Valinor, Telperion, and Laurelin, who bathed the world in their glow. Their light was captured in the Silmarils by Feanor's unmatched skill. These gems held within them the essence of the tree's light, a beacon of beauty and sorrow, for they became the cause of much strife and longing. The Silmarils sealed the fates of Beren and Luthien. Their love, transcending death, shone as brightly as the light they sought. Together, they defied the darkness. As time flowed ever onward, the Silmaril became the evening star, Eärendil, who sailed the heavens with a Silmaril upon his brow, a guiding star for all who wandered in the night, including Elros, the founder of Númenor. And in the Third Age, the light was captured once more within the Phial of Galadriel, which became a beacon for Frodo and Sam in the darkest of times. This rich lore was not lost on Samwise, as he tells Frodo as they made their way to Mordor. Beren now. He never thought he was going to get that Silmaril from the Iron Crown in Thangorodrim, and yet he did, and that was a worse place and a blacker danger than ours. But that's a long tale, of course, and goes on past the happiness and into grief and beyond it. And the Silmaril went on and came to Eärendil. And why, sir, I never thought of that before. You've got some of the light of it in that star glass that the lady gave you. Why, to think of it, we're in the same tale still. It's going on. Don't the great tales never end? The great tales, woven from the very fabric of our dreams and fears, inhabit our hearts and live in our laughter and our tears. As long as there are those willing to listen, with minds to dream, the great tales will endure, just as the tale of gil-estel endures through the ages of Middle-earth. Thank you very much for tuning into Realms Unravelled. Before I bid you a fond farewell, we would like to take this opportunity to light the beacons and call for aid. If you did enjoy this video, we would ask that you kindly click the like button below. Also, we would be very grateful if you would consider subscribing and clicking on the bell icon. By doing so, you will be notified when we upload new videos. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, farewell, fellow explorers of Middle-earth.